Good evening and welcome to the next instalment of Pulse on Property from Residential Estates, Pulse on Property episode 2, where we look at the property news, views, reviews and stats of September. There's a lot to talk about, so without further ado, we'll get on with it. But my name's Jason Guest. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me tonight on my right, I have James Davis. Good evening, sir.
Hiya.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And on my left, I've got Mr. Michael Johns.
Again, thank you. Yeah, good to be here, Jason.
In the back, we've got my colleagues Ian looking after things in chat, and Rich as well. And very good thanks to Abby as well for putting the slides together for this evening's presentation. I hope everybody is well and joining us. So we've got a lot to get through. If we get the contents up, let's have a look at what we're looking at this evening, if I can get there. So before we actually get on to property through the years, we are going to have a look at the Liz Truss and becoming Prime Minister. We'll get onto that very shortly. We're going to have a look. Obviously, there's been a huge amount of news, as we all know, and the biggest one probably being Queen Elizabeth II passing. Obviously, a massive, huge event in the UK history. We're going to be taking a look back through the decades of her extraordinary reign as a little bit of a tribute, and also relating it to the property industry. So we'll have a look at that. Rising rents will be a topic we'll cover. UK unemployment rates as well are down, or lowest they've ever been since, I think it's 1974. We'll have a look at why. The new vision for a world-leading digital property market, and the government coming into the modern age finally. And then we've got a guest speaker, one of our own. We've got somebody that you know very well, I believe.
Very well. It's my daughter.
Okay.
Although you may look at her and think it's my sister, but yes, it is my daughter.
Not granddaughter.
No.
Okay. So we've got Millie joining us, Millie Johns joining us later on, and she'll be discussing her experience as a young first-time buyer and how the cost of living crisis has affected her and her family. Before we get on with tonight's stuff, as I say, we've got a lot to get through. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. Obviously, we've got the chat box there. Pop any questions into chat and we'll do our best to answer them. If we don't get the time to answer them, we will have details of that. We've got your email addresses and we will contact you after the event. Get involved, as I said, ask questions, speak to each other if you want. Ian will be putting links into the chat as we go along to any brochures, news articles, things like that. If there's any future topics you want us to discuss in future Pulse on Properties, feel free to email us. Ian will be putting the contact details on screen as well. We're always happy to answer questions. Book to speak to the team as well. If you want to speak to Mr. Johns or James or any of our other consultants, Chris, Phil, and Alison, or anybody in the short-term Let's team as well, feel free to email us. Without further ado, let's crack on. So, as I say, it's not in the contents there, but first thing we want to talk about, Conservative Party member Liz Truss has emerged as the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. As you can see there, Liz Truss polled a total vote of 81,000 or 81.3 thousand to defeat her opponent Rishi Sunak, who polled 60,000 votes in the Conservative Party's election. What does that mean for the property industry?
Yeah, well, we sort of prepared a little bit on this, didn't we, last week? Obviously, the last few days, it's
we had bank interest rates.
Changed a little bit. So I was just going to try and put a bit of a positive spin on it, really, because I think we're all probably, if we look at the news, we'd get thoroughly depressed, wouldn't we? With interest rates going up and quantitative easing and the pound devaluing. So I think it's just trying to almost look at some of the positives from that. So I had a brief look today And if you, I think the big question everyone's saying is, are house prices going to crash? Are they going to go down? So I did a little bit of research today, having a look at why house prices have gone up. And when actually you look at it, I can't see it changing. So we don't know whether house prices are going to go down. My personal opinion is I don't think it will, because I've wrote down here, it's supply and demand. So the supply and demand is still there. Our population is, if we look on other slides in a minute, it's just under 70 million. And if you look at how that's increased over the last 10, 15 years, it's gone up massively. Also as well, there's just not enough houses. We're not just building enough houses. So whilst we've got the pound devalue and interest rates are going up, there's still this demand. Is just, I still don't think it's going to go away. And
because there's a shortfall still from COVID, obviously.
there's still a
We're
shortfall
still
from
mentioning
COVID.
the pandemic,
Yeah.
but it has had a massive knock-on effect for things. Hasn't it?
Interest rates are interest rates are rising, which people think have a huge effect. But I sort of did a bit of a stress test, as you would do on this myself this afternoon, and then just to sort of put it out there. If you're buying a house at £140,000, you're putting down a 25% deposit, even at an interest rate of 7%. On an AST rental yield of 6-7%, it's still actually covering it over 25 years. So there's, it might not be so good as what we've had it, but I just can't see it crashing like some of the papers that you're reading. And in another example, I think of that as well, what I've picked up today is the quantitative easing that we've done is to protect the pension funds in the UK. And off the back of this, another article in today's paper saying that 47% of the people that were polled this week in the ages of 20s, 30s and 40s are considering taking money out of their pension funds and putting it into property. So there's all these, I think what you do, if you pick up the paper, look at the news, it's always doom and gloom. But there are some positives, even with the pound, with the pound devaluing, it will make overseas investors, it makes it a lot more profitable to buy properties in the UK. So there's, everything has a positive spin on it, I think.
I saw somebody talking about, can we relate this anywhere to 2008? And you can't,
No.
because the lending's different. And 2008 crash, it was all to do with the issue and the lending.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually, when you look at it, it wasn't to do with the property prices.
Yeah.
Because the property prices spiked in 2007 or just before 2008.
Yeah.
To about 25% more than they were at the time or whatever, very quickly. So when we had the crash, they actually, when you look at the values, they didn't go down by that much, but it was all the lending and the high
They've
lending.
been over lending. There was the Northern Rock, you probably remember it, John's Deli, the Northern Rock 120% mortgage.
Yeah,
it was for 100,000 and we get 120 mortgage on it.
It was more to do with the self-certification mortgages.
Yeah.
People were self-certifying themselves, and they just couldn't afford. I mean, I had a friend at the time who was refused a credit card with £1,000 credit limit on it. He then went out a few weeks later and bought 3 2-bedroom apartments in Manchester for £250,000 each, and didn't even get questioned.
No.
Of course, when that downturn comes and those apartments are built and they're not rented out, he's walking back into the bank and handing the keys back because he can't afford them. And then the banks get all of these properties back. They can't sell them. They can't sell them. They're stuck with that asset in that market. So,
and there wasn't a demand as much for the rental side as well. And we know with our speaking to our guys in lettings, we get property advertised. It's let that day. It's literally let that day. So there's the demand for people who've got to live somewhere. We've got this growing population, aging population, and people, whatever's happened to the economy, have to have somewhere to live. Whether that's they're going to buy somewhere or rent somewhere. So, less residential people buying, it increases the buy-to-lets because you have more people renting.
And we're actually going to come on to that a little bit later, because with the UK rising rents, that's actually also that's in part due to the demand and lack of supply, which is always, we always normally relate that to property prices, but in this instance, it's actually relating to the rental market as well. Colin, I see there you mentioned about 1975 to 77, high inflation and interest rates rising from 8 to 16%. House prices rose by over 50% in 1 year and doubled over the next 3 to 5 years. Interesting, very interesting. And I think you'll find the next section where we go through the Queen's reign and Elizabeth's reign and the property, relating it to the property market. Yeah, we can actually see that when we look at that. So really interesting.
It's a
to
good
mention
point,
that.
Colin.
It's
It's a great point, Colin.
I'd also say though, with the weak pound, I think it's actually a very good thing for our industry in particular.
Yeah.
I mean, not only are more foreign investors looking at now investing in the UK because the pound's weak, but if you look at the staycation market, how expensive is it now for us to go and holiday in Spain and Greece and places like that? I mean, you're not getting a euro for a pound now.
No.
And so that will have a huge knock-on effect. And there are a lot of UK investors who look at investing abroad as well. They won't be looking at investing abroad at the moment. They'll be looking at home. So
I think
the
flights have gone up. I think it said in the paper this morning, pre-pandemic flights, it's about 47% more expensive now to go on holiday abroad than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
47%.
47,
Yeah. So massively.
Good for the short-term let market.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that as well, aren't
Yeah.
we? In terms of bookings, etc. Good evening, Maha. Thank you for joining us. I think we need to move on.
Yeah.
But probably the biggest news, I would say, certainly this month, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, the UK monarch, the longest reigning monarch in the UK's history. Fantastic, obviously, achievement. And yeah, we thought we would do, I suppose, I don't want to say fun. Obviously, the sides Abby's put together, a little bit fun in terms of reminiscing. I'm sure you can relate to some more than I. Johnsy, we'll get to that. But she had a fantastic reign of 70 years. And so, yeah, let's have a quick flick through that reign. Obviously, during her time, fantastic achievements. We reached the moon, DNA sequencing, Concorde came and went. Anybody here ever go on Concorde? My grandparents did, but I think
I've been on the Concorde simulator, which they used to practice on, and I've landed it.
Oh wow!
And crashed it. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you manage to land it as well?
I crashed it on the landing.
Just crashed it. Okay. Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Good job you're not flying that. Okay. Mobile phones. Yeah. God, I can remember. Having no mobile phones, calling the operator as a kid, back to home, reversing charges.
Or when you had a girlfriend when you were at home and you sat on the stairs and you had the family, phone.
To you.
Yeah.
And then you're wondering whether your parents are listening. They've actually got, they've lifted the phone up upstairs.
Yeah.
And it was a thing then, having two phones in the house. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all sorts of
dial. It was the dial ones when you had to dial around. I think that they've come back in fashion now.
Yeah.
I've seen those. People's houses are fashionable.
And virtual reality. So, the 1950s, Queen Elizabeth II comes to the throne 6th of February 1952 after the passing of her father. House building boom throughout the 1950s largely replaced the 250,000 homes that had been destroyed during the Blitz in World War II. Average house prices there, we can see just under £2,000, or in today's money, just over 56,000 in today's money. I actually thought that was quite expensive. If you equate it to 56,000 in today's money, I thought that was actually quite a lot. In all honesty, I'd expect it to be less than that. But I suppose in reality, £2,000, not a lot of money. No, well, it would have been.
But then, what were people? I guess the average salary was probably, I don't know, 10, 20.
We're just following on
actually
from a decade of devastation, though, of World War II.
Yeah.
Building materials will have only just recovered. The supply of a lot of materials, just recovering. So there is going to be a huge demand for housing.
1960s, peace and love. We've got a few things there. Well, don't know about Austin Powers, but certainly Campbell's Tomato Soup, the Beatles, Flintstones, Batman. Average UK salary £11,000. A loaf of bread costs 5p. Today, a loaf of bread, the average we've got is £1.26 for a loaf of bread today. Back in the 60s, 5 pence to buy a loaf of bread. 95% of homes now have electricity. Which, God, I wish I didn't have my electricity now. In all honesty, I might turn it all off and get rid of it, go back to fires. And the UK population is 53 million. What did you say? I think 60,
just under 70 million, just under
60,
70, just 67, 68. Yeah. So that's a huge increase in 60 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's huge. Absolutely huge. Nearly 20 million.
Get on to the 70s. I know we're skipping through really quickly. There is a lot to get through, guys. But, you know, a bit of nostalgia.
Yeah.
For you. You probably remember the 70s.
I'm just actually, Jason, I'm just coming in now. 73 I was born. So.
Okay. I'm not saying when I was born because then I can't stop making those
Well, we've
jokes.
passed yours.
74, actually.
Right, okay.
74.
72, I'm 76, 72, 74, 76.
Oh, okay. There we go. So UK population there rises to 54 million. Bottle of wine costs £1. I actually think that's quite expensive.
Yeah.
Bottle of wine today, have we got that? Yeah, we have. Bottle of wine. Wow, average. We've got £8. £8 for a bottle of wine. Is that average?
Well, not everybody drinks Lambrini like you, mate. I mean, some of us have got a
better palate.
Yeah, a more sophisticated palate.
Okay.
Yeah.
£4 for a glass of wine today compared to £1. Pint costs 20p. Doesn't anymore. The iconic Mini, £600 to buy new, whereas 22.5 now for the standard model. That won't be for the S, will it?
No.
Standard model 22,000, and house prices there. So we see at the beginning of the 70s, house prices still average £10,000. Sorry, I'm just reading. So we've got Maha saying, so with the pound getting weaker, how would you predict in regards to house prices will go down?
I
don't know. What would you say to that, John?
Well, with the pound getting weaker, but you've got to bear in mind that from an investment market, 60% of our buyers are from overseas.
Yeah.
So our biggest market has just got bigger.
Yeah.
So there's more competition. There's going to be less supply. There's going to be a bigger demand.
Yeah.
So that's really, it's a pure supply versus demand market. Although you've got a lot of these external sort of environmental external factors happening, at the end of the day, it's supply demand market. And what we've seen over the last 3 years here is a huge increase in sales in residential estates from both UK and overseas, despite having coronavirus, the war, the Queen's death, change of government, loads of legislation changes in the market, which has seen the government try to hack down buy-to-let investment. By increasing stamp duty way beyond what it should have been, particularly destroying the London property market, investment market. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever happens in the external environment here, it's still a supply demand market, and that will, people are always going to need somewhere to live.
I think you're right, John, by saying it's looking at the type of people we're selling to, it's looking at our types of buyers, and 60% of them are overseas, and I'd probably say another 20-30% are people probably our sort of age who haven't got a pension, who are doing it for their pension.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep doing it, aren't they? Because it's, whatever happens to the pound, they still need a pension, don't they? Yeah.
There's obviously very good tax efficient ways as well of using your money.
Yeah.
So whether it be in a pension, whether it's in a company, people are planning for the future, and they're no longer able to rely on pensions. People aren't buying annuities anymore because they're getting probably 200-300% better deals by buying a property than an annuity. So we've done that presentation before, haven't we, with an annuity?
I'm going to drag you back to Jaws, Rocky, and Maggie Thatcher.
Perfect. So, well, I was a big Maggie fan, so don't hold that against me.
And Bowie. There we go. Oh, and Star Wars. I can't remember. I'll be in if I don't mention Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'll get absolutely lambasted. 1980s average salary in the 80s is now just under £17,000. Average UK population risen to 56 million.
Mad, it's still way below.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, only 2 million gone up. In the 80s. Okay.
Yeah.
House prices. So, I mean, obviously, Colin mentioned about 75, 77. But now we can see how at the beginning of the 80s, from the 70s, house prices rose dramatically, and then up to 25,000 at the beginning of the 80s, and then started rising throughout the 80s to £55,000. Started going insane in terms of the property market.
We saw dramatic changes in the 80s with property prices.
I mean, I might mention it again later on if we relate that, though, at the minute. You know, so we've got 25,000, jumps up to 55,000. UK house price as of July 2022 was 292,000. Pint of milk in the 80s, 20p. Saying that, I wasn't really buying milk. You got it at school.
It just landed on your step, didn't it? Didn't there some sort of fairy come down and sort of land it on your doorstep?
Either that, or when you opened the door, it wasn't there. But yes, it did. You opened the door, it appeared sometimes with a bottle of orange.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how that happened. And 12 eggs, 70p for 12 eggs. That seems quite expensive. 12 eggs today. We've got average £2.22 for 12 eggs.
That's what I was
today.
thinking. Yeah, 6 eggs would be about £1. I was thinking.
What, do you do the shopping?
Yes.
Do you?
Okay.
And
the cooking.
Oh well. One back round at yours then. Everybody to James's.
Colin's just said he had a fight with the blue tits for the top of the milk.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, they used to. Yeah,
because the cream was always at the top.
Yeah.
And the blue tits used to peck through the top of the foil, foil top, and drink some of the cream.
Yeah.
Never drank it all. They just drank the cream off the top.
Yeah, the good bit.
Yeah. But we used to have. I think we used to have 4 pints delivered every day of silver top, which was like really creamy. And my dad used to pour the cream off all 4 bottles over his cornflakes, so we were left with the milk. So, hi, Dad.
Yeah, thanks for that. 1990s, UK average population now 58 million. So still only going up in little jumps there. It has obviously boomed. Anyway, 1990, average UK property price is now around 60,000. Towards the end of the 90s, we see the UK average property price rise to 67,000. London increases to 140k. Massive jump. And I think this is where we saw the start of the London UK divide, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it just goes insane and distorts the... obviously now that's why we have to have stats where you have London and the rest of England.
I think you also saw a gap with prestigious areas. So you got prestigious areas in any county, and those expensive areas really got expensive and left some poorer areas behind. So you had a definite sort of a class divide here that was appearing in the 90s. Yeah, I remember it very well.
Jurassic Park. I saw Jurassic Park at the cinema in when it came out in Chelsea with a girlfriend I was seeing at the time, and we were staying with she had a rich family staying in Chelsea, a flat in Chelsea. And you know what did it for me? I originally from Burton-on-Trent, used to go to the cinema for £2. Cost me £11 a ticket to see Jurassic Park. I remember it, £22 to see Jurassic Park. Anyway,
I think you got a 3210 Nokia there. So I was saying the other day that a lot of car manufacturers thought the 3210, the 6210, this is it now for mobile phones. This is as good as it's going to get. It can't get any better. So a lot of car manufacturers actually put a charger in to their central, their cradle in the centre for the 62 and the 3210. 3 months later, they're obsolete again. So a technology really started to boom here now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You saw things coming out virtually every week. Different things. Pokemon, is that? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Stream, etc. Let's move on. The 2000s. Average salary £25,000 at the beginning of the 2000s, whereas today the average UK salary, do you know what it is?
36.
Very close, 38.
Okay, that was close.
So £38,000 is the average salary today. It will now take 7 years at the beginning of the 2000s, 7 years working to for somebody to buy their first property.
Which is crazy because the old calculation used to be 3.5 or 3.75 times your salary that you were able to mortgage, didn't it? And now that's just been.
I think it was 2 or 2.5 times joint.
Yeah, 2.5 times joint. Yeah, so that's just crazy now.
Average property prices now rise to 155,000 by the mid 2005 or 2005. There, look at London though, 270,000,
which is about what it is now for the rest of the UK.
Yeah,
20 years on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're at 292 in July. And so the rest of the UK's now hit London as it was beginning of the 2000s. 2005, there 71% of properties in England are owned rather than rented. Whereas, I mean, this is only the private rental sector, but as of today, 4.4 million households live in the private rented sector. That's 19% of all households. 2007 to 2012. Now this is where we have the just mentioning on Colin there, is my son's got an offer of 10 times salary for mortgage in the last few weeks.
Oh, really?
Because it's not on this. It's now. It's on affordability now. It's not based on So even though it's like X times, but it's based on affordability now. So the more you earn, the more disposable income you have, so the more you can basically borrow, basically. That's how it works.
Were you selling overseas property in this period, Johns?
It was before this. I mean, we stopped selling overseas property in 2008.
Okay.
Or 2007, 2008, when the recession was just hitting.
Yeah.
Because actually people, we weren't selling holiday homes, we were selling investments abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And it quickly became apparent that people were switching their investment strategy to the UK. Because it was a safe market, it was, a brilliant judiciary system. People were no longer gambling with their money, investing in places like southern Italy or worse, Bulgaria and Romania and places like that. So I moved my sort of operations to the UK as well.
So we see 2008, see the financial crash, worldwide recession. Property prices now dropping back down to 155k, which was the same as 4 years before. But this is what I mentioned earlier. They never went right down because they'd spiked before. But it was all about the lending, wasn't it? And over-lending. 2010 sees the recession lifting. Again, property prices start to increase to 160. London's double that at 330. 2012 sees national home ownership drop now from 71 to 65%. This was in part due to the rising property prices that we saw after the recession lifted. Let's move on. Like I said, we're still on this. We've got a lot to get through. 2013-16 average UK salary is now at 27,000. UK population hits 65 million. So we've had this boom now in the 2000s.
Yes, it was the 2007, 8.
Probably the recession. Everybody's I don't know, bit depressed. Let's maybe I don't know.
Or as Jonty says, a lot of people migrated back to the UK as well.
2016 nationwide housing shortage. Now we can see supply and demand really hitting. UK house prices now reach record high of 300,000 outside of London. And we've got 300,000. We're now below that. And London exceeds 500,000, 500,000. Kensington averaging 2 million. Insanity. People investing into London at the time. And there we have Monsters Inc. From memory, I think. Won't dwell on that. We're starting to get out of my realms of things, but there we go. And then we come into the present day, or the present era, 2019 to the present day. COVID pandemic hits. Housing market stalls March 2020 before it restarts in June. Lockdown brings a reassessment of what households are looking for in a home, which we're still seeing the effects of today. We mentioned short-term lets, mentioned the flights abroad now. Yep. People still holidaying in the UK because of it. Stamp duty holiday in the UK, mentioned that as well. The government trying to help things and kickstart the market. Low mortgage rates fixed for 5 years. This, in fact, Millie's going to talk about her experience with mortgage rates, such like. Obviously, we've now got an issue with the Bank of England, interest rates going up.
I think we got a series of slight adaptations from and things that have been brought in by the government. I think what they've realised is to get a boom or a depression, you need everything to go against you. Everything moves in one direction. If you see something moving towards depression, if you give a little bit of a positive in there, it will pick things up again quite quickly. So they're constantly after that middle ground. And so we've seen a number of things like Help to Buy. You know, not a lot of people actually got a lot out of Help to Buy. It just eased the market slightly. And sometimes it's that feel-good factor that you need just to bring the market level again.
Changing stamp duty now to mitigate the rise in interest rates. That's one of the things that they're doing, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah.
And finally, Propel's nominal price growth of 18% in 21 months. Annual housing transactions exceed 1.5 million for the first time since 2008. Certainly, we've seen a lot of movement in the market over the past couple of years. So yeah. There we go. I mean, it's, you know, we're going to talk about some topics in a minute, some other topics and in the news. But that was really, thank you, Colin. Abby, we will certainly mention that to Abby. I'm sure she's watching, but really appreciate that. And good evening, Naeem. Thank you for joining us. Brilliant. So, that was a look back at 50s to the present day. Obviously sad in terms of the Queen Elizabeth dying. We've now got obviously King Charles. And he said Prince. I'm so used to saying that. We've got King Charles on the throne. We've got Liz Truss in charge. I'm sure next month's webinar is going to be really interesting to see how the next month pans out with all things. Obviously, you had a quick look today with the bank. You know, well, we've got a lot to talk about next month when that comes. I'm sure we'll see some changes happening, and we'll get to that when we do. Let's move on. Rising rents push renters towards smaller properties and lower running costs. I've
got an issue with this, and I've got an issue with a few of these articles that have been written.
Well, before you get on that, let me say, so Richard Donnell, Executive Director at Zoopla. You're going to come on to that, I believe. Zoopla
and Rightmove do not distinguish between different property types. So over the last 20 years, we've had a huge amount of smaller properties hit the market, whether it be student digs, whether it be an abundance of apartments, new apartments hitting the market. And they think that people are choosing smaller places to live in. It's actually the reverse. Coronavirus is people are wanting larger places to stay, larger places to live in. They want more outdoor space and things. But these trends, I mean, Zoopla and Rightmove, they create articles and create news from the raw data that they have in their engine, which doesn't really report on the actual trend. It's reporting on what their figures will tell you. And anybody that's working in stats knows that you can work stats whichever way you want to work them. We've always been able to do that. So I would say that one of the biggest things here, I mean, I don't think anybody is thinking, well, if I get a flat which is 10 square meters smaller, then I'm going to be using less electricity. You just go around and turn the lights off. You know, I don't think this is a trend that we're going to see. if I've got two properties that I'm selling to an investor, one is 55 square meters, the other one's 65 square meters, and they're the same price, which one's the investor going to buy? Every day of the week, it's the one at 65. So I don't think there's really a lot in this. We picked it out as an article because we thought it would be quite big news. And it's the type of thing that people think, wow, this is a revelation, this. Why? Everybody's buying smaller properties now because they'll have lower running costs. It's just not the case.
What I will say though is, and I know, but it is true that we come back to the demand, supply and demand. Hannah Grattan, we've got their lettings director at LSL's Your Move, and reads Rain's comments that they're experiencing high levels of demand. You mentioned obviously we get properties on at the minute and they're going straight away, and that that is that's confirmed by them as well. LSL are stating that what they're snapped up within hours of hitting the market, over 270 lettings branches nationwide. It's a picture that's reflected up and down the country.
And every every sort of type of market, where it's selling for £400 or selling for £1,500, £2,000 a month rent now, that they seem to just fly out, don't they? It doesn't seem enough.
They do. Petros, thank you for that. Thank you for saying great stats. Much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed it. But you go on to say about obviously rising rents and people looking for office space, staying put as well.
Yeah,
that's the people staying because of the pandemic. I think working from home, things like that.
I've got an issue with office space as well at the moment.
Go on.
It's so negative. How many of our projects of residential property are conversions from commercial space to residential space? Pretty much all of them. There's office blocks everywhere that you can buy up and turn into resident, and there's a tax break for developers as well to turn these properties into residential blocks. It's called a permitted development. You don't need a special planning permission for them. You can go ahead and do the work. You'll get the planning. You have to wait for the rubber stamp. That's all. Okay, so it's very tax beneficial for a developer to turn a commercial block into a residential block because there's so many of them. Yeah, I still hear about people investing in commercial property in the UK. That goes straight over my head. I mean, some of these commercial blocks are in amazing positions as well within a city, and yet they're now being turned into residential blocks. And maybe that'll change now. The governments are releasing more land for development. We're only a small island in the UK, so we haven't got a huge amount of room to work with. Therefore, we have to be a bit creative, and we reuse space.
A lot of it is Greenbow as well, which
But one thing that's helping though is helping the economy, because now we've got residential, which can be STL in the centre of cities, more of it, meaning you can get more people into employment in the inner city areas because they can live there, etc. Just want to touch on Colin. Colin's been really active. Really appreciate it, Colin. You mentioned that you started in the last couple of years with HMOs, where you can provide a room, including your bills, around 50% of the cost of a one-bed associated with cost, rent, council tax, etc. These have worked brilliantly. Well, that's fantastic. 8 to 10% yields. Wondering how others have found this. If there is anybody in chat, that obviously wants to chat with Colin on that, and if you've got any HMOs, that would be good to hear from anybody else. But on rents, you don't seem to see a limit on rents at the minute. Rents going up, property does come up if it re-rents in days, if not hours, with no discussion on rent. No, I agree, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the rents, and that's good for investment as well. Obviously, from a rental, I'm a tenant myself. I hope my landlord's not looking, because my landlord's not put the rent up in 4 years. Shh, don't tell him that. But I think
that's a good point though, because landlords, it is about getting a decent return, but actually it's also about getting a decent tenant as well. So if someone's paying on time, they're not causing you any hassle or stress. Why upset the apple cart?
Exactly. John, you're talking about commercial to residential. Colin mentions there commercial to residential can be done under PD, so long as commercial not being used for.
And just on Colin's point on HMOs, they're great, they're brilliant, and I think John's would be the same as me. I think it's all about diversification. And HMO is a great investment to have within a portfolio. I have a few different ones that I always say.
A lot of property investors have made a lot of money out of HMOs. There's a lot of property investors I know that have not done it right, and have lost a lot of money and been stuck with it as well. You've got to be in the right area. You've got to have the right structure. You've got to have the right target market. At the end of the day, outside the city of London, young professionals will not share a bathroom and a kitchen.
Yeah.
I don't know any young professionals in this area who will share a bathroom because they don't need to.
I'm not sharing one with you.
No. Well, we have done when we've been away.
Well, we have, yes.
Doing exhibitions and things. But yeah,
that on a show. What happens on the show stays on the show.
That's it. But actually, in London, HMOs work really, really well. But long term, I have doubts on to whether they're going to be successful long term. But generating an 8 to 10% rental yield, that's brilliant. I mean, it's probably not as much as we're getting on short term let property, but still, I mean, it's a great return in the current market when a lot of buy to lets aren't even getting 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
You know, it's still a success story.
Interest rates have gone up, but the banks are still only giving you 2.5%.
Yeah.
Has asked, said, I've been looking for investing HMO, wondering what would be the ups and downs for such an investment, whether or not you'd be with or not such investments. I see Niku there has so said the first episode of Rolls on Property explains all different types of property investment. Oh, I appreciate that, Niku. It does. And thank you for pointing that out. And certainly, we can actually get a link to that. If you can find it on YouTube, they are there. And we'll certainly send you a link to it and a bit more information about different property investment types. It is certainly worth watching that episode, though.
I think he's done it already.
Oh, there we go. Oh, okay.
Is it? No, he's just about to do it.
But we can get a link to that to you and further information. But appreciate stepping in there, Niku, as well. Glad you certainly watched it and hopefully enjoyed it.
And just go back to Mahu, I think, just regarding HMOs, probably, just probably a little bit conscious of time. Give us a call, call into
Yeah. I mean, we've got a very open mind to
all. Drop us an
all.
email, set a Zoom up with one of us. Yeah.
Well, all types of property, we've experienced all of them.
Yeah.
Our opinions might not be right all the time, but we'll certainly try and give a balanced view.
Yeah.
On we speak to investors. I mean, I speak to probably 30 to 50 investors every single day.
Yeah.
Mostly new situations, and they share. What I will do is I'll try and get their information on where they're at and what they've done in the past and how they've performed.
I always try to an HMO. I don't know. It's just once again personal opinion, but I always would steer someone away from it. It's probably their first investment. I always more for it's a big project, whether you're going to develop it yourself or work with someone else.
Again, it depends
on your experience, but it
depends on where they are in the cycle, whether they're looking at creating a HMO or whether they're going to take one on as a going concern. Yeah, there's a big difference.
Petros says mentioned he definitely agrees on this regarding HMOs. Think it's a short-term investment though, and I don't think it can be passive investment. You need to be involved. Yeah. I think actually Collins perhaps stepped in and obviously mentioned about that. But obviously it depends on what you want to get out of it, what investment. But that's no different to an STL in a way. STLs you can get involved, but I wouldn't myself. I've done lettings for 15 years in my past.
Yeah.
If I bought an STL as an investment now, I'd want an agent to look after it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another topic for another day. Ian there very kindly put the link to the podcast where you can actually hear the Pulse on Property on Facebook. Links to, I think it's on Spotify, etc. Naheem, don't worry, you've joined anyway, so much appreciated joining. Maybe this has already been discussed after the events of the last few days. It's very unpredictable time. Isn't this going to affect the entire economy and property investment? If it's already been discussed, just ignore this. No, we will certainly have a quick chat. And you slightly touched on.
Yeah, I just we don't know. Crystal ball, we don't know anything. We really just don't know what is going to happen.
But I think next month's Pulse on Property is going to be the one to listen to because that'll be quite.
But I think from a property perspective, and obviously that's what we're here raveling the economy. From a property perspective, I just can't see there being a crash because of the supply and demand. I just think
that's what's going to hold
we can't
it.
build enough houses to going back to the population. As Johns, he said 6% of our sales at the moment are overseas buyers. And if people are worried about recession and they're worried about their money, where's the safest place to put it? In a house. Do you know what I mean?
Plus, I was talking to this earlier with Mike, and if we did see prices coming down, or obviously the pound, which is going down in terms of value, that then actually then brings investment from other areas. You will look at overseas investors, go, oh, I'd like to invest in the UK, which in itself helps our economy.
And I think if the big thing is rents aren't going to go down. So if you put your money in stocks and shares, the business can go bust and you can lose it all. If you put your money in the bank, such as Northern Rock, Bradford, and Bingley, you can lose all your money. If you put it in property, it's always going to rent, and rents are always going to go up. So as long as you're not
buying something
tangible,
yeah.
And if the rent, if you're doing, let's say you do it on a 5-year fixed rate mortgage, and all your rent is going to do is go up. If it's covering the mortgage, your investment's safe in it.
Yeah, and I don't know what the figures were. I mean, I think you sent them to me earlier, James, in the office. But now you've got a huge amount of younger investors looking at their future. And they're not investing in pensions anymore. They're looking at better ways to invest their money. They're investing it in property.
Yeah.
So,
I think we did a study, and we've seen actually our buyers, the average age of our buyers over the past couple of years has actually come down quite dramatically to what it was. So, that just, in a way, it proves it on a local level. Colin's made some great points there about choosing the right place for an HMO. Again, really much appreciate the comments, Colin. Totally agree. It's like any property location. Buy at the right price, convert at the right price, all is good. You've got 2 large conversions at the minute. Interest rates are not giving an issue. Conversion of large houses HMO can give good increase in value. Last I did provided a 70% increase there in GDV, along with good income. Brilliant. That's great to hear, Colin, and fantastic that it's continuing to do well for you.
You guys who were talking about HMOs on the chat need to get into serviced accommodation and short-term lets.
Yeah.
Because the kind of numbers that you're getting in HMOs, and I know that we previously got on HMOs, are blown away by what you're going to get on short-term let property in the right area. If you've got a management company like Residential Estates who have got corporate contracts with very large companies, people like Shell, people like Bank of America, Bank of China, Adidas, Nestle, Airbus, we've got who are sending people around the country all the time and using our managed apartments and booking up, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, people moving around the country doing training courses, and mix that in with also an element of tourist or leisure bookings as well. What we're experiencing is not only is it more profitable on paper, you've got better lending options than you will ever have with HMOs. You've got flexibility in terms of using different rental models as well. You've got the fact that you can easily sell on. You don't have to convert it back to a residential property because the difference is just really the furniture pack. It's a good furniture pack that we spend a lot of money on. But it's an area that you should really, really look at getting into because this is an area of real growth.
I just want to step in there, John. I totally agree. But I mean, for someone like Colin, he's obviously done really well with HMOs. And if you're invested and you know what you're doing, great. Obviously HMOs for the inexperienced can be very tricky. I wouldn't advise anybody doing it. Colin mentions there, SA is great. I'm looking to mix with HMO. That's great. Obviously, you mentioned diversification of your portfolio. Realise that costs can be 30%. Actually, Colin, we work on 40%. So when we predict figures, and the figures coming out of your costs, the outgoing costs. I've forgotten what the word we
were doing 30. We were doing 30%, but this year
we've changed that to 40% when we're projecting figures. And generally speaking, as well, it's when we present a projection, we also factor in that 40% as well. That generally also includes our management costs if you wanted them managing. And I'll say that now. I think it's 19 or 20%.
Yeah.
The big but is for anybody listening to that, and you think, I've got 40% of my income going out. But if it's not about what's going out, it's not about what's coming in, it's about what you're left with as an investment. And generally speaking, on the projections that we do, even on low, when we look at conservative figures, you're still looking on low occupancy rates of 65% of around about 8 to 10%, and that's low. That's when we're conservative, isn't it?
We've got a lot of people now that are making nearly 15%. That maybe bought a few years ago, and the property's matured. It does take a little bit of time to get going,
and that's with the 40% cost going out.
Absolutely, yeah. But you've also got huge tax efficiencies that we don't even touch on this because we're not tax experts. But you've got capital allowances that you can claim back. You've also got you can claim all of your interest on your mortgage against your tax liabilities. And you've also got a huge amount of costs that you can claim back. You can also claim back all of your council tax. We factor the council tax figures into the costs.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
And we still, even though they can claim them all back. So actually, it's probably closer to the 30% mark in terms of costs after we've considered all of what you can get back.
You are very correct, Colin. Tax is a whole different subject. Yes, we won't go there.
And we don't want to turn this into an essay conversation again, like it always happens.
However, funnily enough, you should mention that, Colin. We are looking to possibly next month get a tax expert in. So if we can do that, we'll certainly do that for next month, if not the month after. And that will be a great webinar to possibly look at.
Well, no one's going to turn up to that.
We are moving on because time is against us. UK unemployment rate slumps to 48-year low. Britain's unemployment rate has hit its lowest level since 1974. On the face of it, I actually thought this was a good thing. When you actually read the article, I believe Ian's going to put it in there. Yes, he has. It states the Office for National Statistics said that the unemployment rate fell to 3.6% in the 3 months to July, lowest rate since May to July in 1974. However, when you actually read the article, it's not so much of a good thing because it actually then goes on to state that it's not just so much about the amount of people that are now in employment, it's actually due to a lot more people now claiming inactivity. Or disability, and also a larger number of people now are retiring earlier. Mentioned due to COVID or coming off the back, so possibly people getting nearer to retirement, but because of COVID, employers have said perhaps it's better to go now. I
still think you've got to look at it positively because what I'm saying is there's jobs out there. At one point I think there was more vacancies out there than people unemployed. So I think that from a housing market, that gives people confidence that one of the things if you're a younger first-time buyer, you're going to think, am I going to buy a house? Well, is my job secure? Well, if the job's not secure, or I couldn't get another job, you'd be nervous. So I think by having lots of vacancies and lots of jobs out there, for whatever the reasons, whether the figures are wrong, it still gives people confidence.
Yeah. Oh, it does. And there are more people in work now. Was it you that mentioned your daughter or her age, sort of slightly older age, but they're all in jobs?
Oh yeah, they've just gone out, decided, got to sixth form, gone and got jobs, and they don't even go out for an interview. One of them's got a couple of jobs in a pub, or a couple of jobs in retail, or jobs in Domino's.
Yeah. My daughter works behind the
turn
bar.
up CV, come and work tomorrow. Bang.
Yeah.
There's lots of jobs out there.
It's a good thing for the market as a whole, but it's also a great example of how a great headline can completely mislead an audience. Again, but that's two out of two we've had. But let's go on to the third.
Let's go for the third. Come on,
journalists. That's marketing for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's move on. If anybody's got anything to comment on that, more than happy to have a chat. But it is what it is. In my view, it's only going to help the property market. In short term. I see Heather's typing. We will certainly answer you, Heather, if you've got a question on that. Johnsy, I know you've got something on this. So the government finally, new vision for a world-leading digital property market. The UK government has now come out of using the quill and ink and paper even, and pens. We've now got a digital system. HM Land Registry launches Strategy 2022 and 3-year business plan to guide the next stage of its digital transformation. Business. Now, this annoyed me. Sorry, I'd like Lord, and I thought it was Callahan. It's not. It's Calavan.
Calavan.
No, which I can't say properly. He said that industries across the economy stand ready to seize on the digital revolution, and the UK's world-renowned property market is no different. The digitisation proposals in this strategy will help the Land Registry deliver more efficient and user-friendly services while driving productivity and growth for the sector. These proposals, along with the action the Land Registry is taking, such as the completion of a local land charges register, will provide a boost to households and businesses engaging with the property market throughout the UK, supporting our ambitious levelling up agenda. In my eyes, that's a great thing, and it's only going to help the economy.
Well, I mean, people may think, how's it going to help? How's it going to help actually grow in the sector? Well, very simple reason. You know, when you buy let's say you buy an investment property like a buy-to-let, and you're then waiting for documents to come back from the Land Registry, and you're waiting for searches to be done or whatever it might be. That whole waiting process is so painful. When you buy something, you want it there and then. And actually, as an investor, if you're expecting a completion within sort of a month, and it drags out to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, the market then changes, and you might see something else that you prefer. And so what do you do? You then cancel that. You cancel that. I've lost my £1,000 reservation fee on that, but I want to buy this one instead. So you start the whole process again on another property. 7 months down the line, you've still not completed, and you see another property you like.
And even the vendor could change. The vendor could change by thinking I've been doing all this.
Exactly, yeah. So the whole system needs speeding up, and we don't want people to be careless about the decisions that they're making. They need to do the right due diligence and the right level of searches and the right level of intervention from the lawyers, from the solicitors. But some of the completion dates we've had and exchange dates, we've had properties that haven't exchanged in like 2 years because of searches and because of very slow solicitors go on holiday or whatever it might be. You know, a lot of the time it's being slowed up because of these antiquated systems that they've got. And this for me is, I mean, the flip side of this is they've been doing this for 20 years. So, you know, whether it actually happens or not, I don't know. But if it does happen and they computerize their systems and put all of those title deeds into a nice content management system, then brilliant. You know,
it's going to help everybody.
It's
going to help Danielle.
Absolutely,
and
help us.
Ian, look in the background there. It's going to make his life easier when he goes home for tea, because she won't be so stressed. That sales will be going through quicker. Heather, I saw that you mentioned, can you send me information on where your SA developments are, please? We will get information out to you. I know Ian's put a link to, well, he actually put a link to the student property, but that's fine. Obviously, if you go there to the, not student yet, if you go to the website, you'll see, if you go to the buy-to-let section, in fact, what we'll do is we'll get the consultant to send out actually an email with more information about specific developments.
We'll send it tomorrow.
So Heather, we'll get that to you, so don't worry about that. We've got your email address, and that will come out to you via email.
Some of our developments, Heather, are what we call off market, and really generally the best stuff in the industry is off market because it gets sold that quickly. We don't advertise it on the internet. So really, when you're looking for an opportunity in serviced accommodation or what we call it short-term let property, you're better dealing with your consultant and guiding you what's coming on the market and what's on the market, so it fits with your criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. We are now moving forward then. In fact, let's move on. Thank you, Ian, for putting that in. Short-term lettings, those are some direct to the bookings, etc. So, but we'll get that information out. We are moving on. to the final section of the piece. We've got our guest speaker for the evening, our very own Millie Johns.
Was that going to be enough room? Yeah.
I think it is. Mills, please join us.
Hello.
So before we get us all up on screen, just to explain, Millie Johns is very well known, as we said before, to yourself.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, well, Millie,
Your granddaughter.
my daughter, and she used to work for residential estates. She's always wanted to be in property. She'll tell you herself, but she went off and she gave me a fantastic grandson recently.
Congratulations. Well, we've said that many times
Yeah.
before, but yes.
But now she's been itching to come back and work in property. So she keeps telling me it's because she wants to work in property, not because she needs the money. So we thought we'd bring her in and ask her some questions.
Yeah, so something a little bit different. Millie's got experience of buying, a young person buying in the property market today with your partner and your family, your young George, isn't it?
George,
Yes. So we're going to talk to you about first-time buyers' experience from that perspective, and also a bit relevant today, obviously, cost of living crisis. We're all experiencing it. I turned on my heating the other day. I felt guilty, actually. Sitting there in my duvet for as long enough, but I couldn't stand it. I woke up this morning, it was freezing.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let's crack on. So really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And it's nice to have you back with us. So over the past couple of years, being away from work, how have you found things in general?
I honestly missed it. I loved bringing up my son and watching him grow, but I was constantly trying to find ways to bring up property into the conversation. I mean, my son now knows the difference between a semi-detached and a detached house. So
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
No, I think he does though. But yeah, we were finding it difficult on one wage with the living crisis. But I really want to get back into property. I've always wanted to work in property, and that's what I enjoy doing. So
We're glad to have you back, as I said. So before you bought your house, you were both living with parents, I believe.
yes.
Living with your dad?
No, we were the mum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I've shared a room with you as well. No, you understand why. Knowing what you know now and what you went through, would you do anything differently in terms of waiting to purchase?
We wouldn't have waited, no, just because we got a good price. We used the Help to Buy scheme, which was a massive help. And I think if we would have waited, we would have constantly been comparing prices and waiting for the right time, which was never going to happen.
And you wouldn't have saved, I guess, would you? It'd be impossible to save anything if you were renting. Or
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned that.
rent, at
haven't you?
least £1,000 in it, rent.
Yeah,
rent
so
bills
rent's
and that,
double
yeah.
what you pay for a mortgage. So
Yeah.
we'd have never been able to save for a deposit. So if we were renting, we'd have just carried on renting.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have ended up bought. So yeah, I'm glad we bought at the right time.
Okay. So you purchased the property with your partner
Mhm.
and then fell pregnant. Getting a bit personal here, but then fell pregnant. You do know this is no news, is it? Right?
I wasn't happy at the time.
Okay. Again, with hindsight, has that had any effect on you purchasing the property? And I suppose the question is, if you had been pregnant before purchasing the house, would you have waited to buy then?
No, I mean, if I was pregnant, we would have had to have rent because we'd have needed the space.
Yeah.
And again, if we'd have rented, we wouldn't have been able to save for a deposit. But I think obviously now we're on the property ladder. So even if we decide to sell, we're still on the property ladder. And we did it before the prices increased as well. So I don't think we would have been able to afford it now.
Have many of your friends your sort of age bought? Were you one of the first ones, Or
Yeah, so most of our friends are renting.
Okay.
We have a couple that have bought, but yeah, most of them
and
are
the ones that are
renting.
renting probably thinking, well, if you've made 20,000-30,000 for like
Yeah,
nothing or whatever.
I mean, they're struggling to get out of it now.
I bet, yeah.
They are struggling to get out of it now. So the ones that have bought are in the same boat as us, where they were happy that they bought at the time they did.
Yeah, excellent.
And I can't remember if we're getting to talk about this later on, but we were talking about it earlier in terms of, we're not going to go into personal in terms of prices, but you've seen a massive increase already, haven't you?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so someone we knew actually bought on our estate 6 months after, and they paid £5,000 more than we did. And theirs was a terrace and ours was a semi.
Wow.
So I mean, it's not a massive difference, but every little counts,
I
doesn't
probably
it?
made 15,000 6 months old.
Yeah.
So, did you buy the house from an owner, or was it from a developer, sales agent, with a sales agent?
Yeah, it was from a developer, as it was a new build.
Which one, if I don't mind asking?
It was Barrett's Homes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was,
Bit of a plug there for Barrett's. Don't know if we get anything, but there you go. Discount on a house, free house.
yeah, so we put the reservation down on off plan, and then we moved in the September, which was about 5 months after we put the reservation fee down.
And why did you buy where you did?
We bought there because it was on the Help to Buy scheme. So we were originally looking at a part-owned property because we hadn't heard of Help to Buy. And we spoke to the advisor, and they said that there was no part-owned properties left where we wanted to buy, and asked if we'd heard of the Help to Buy scheme. So we looked into it, and we realised that it suited us more. We managed to find an estate that was doing Help to Buy, which was in between my hometown and my partner's hometown. So it really fit us better. And obviously town from there's only about 3 minutes in the car, so it's a really good place. Really good place, yeah.
Okay.
I'm snobby here, but when you get the part-owned properties, they're usually in the area of the estate where the social housing are. And those will generally not increase as much in value as the ones that will be on Help to Buy. So I remember being part of that conversation with Millie at the time, that you're much better with Help to Buy, in my opinion. That may seem really snobby, but when it's your own daughter, you want what's best for her. And it's a lot of money that you're putting up here. Yeah. It's a big decision. It's the biggest financial decision of your life.
So it was a new development. You said it was off plan and all that. So moving into a new development, how have you? I mean, we're not going to. I don't want to throw you under the bus if you've got bad neighbours or something like that. We won't tell them. I'm sure they're not watching. How have you found the area in general? You're now 4 years in.
Yeah.
Are there any negatives? Anything that you would change?
I mean, the neighbours are lovely. Everyone.
You're not just saying that?
No, honestly,
okay.
The neighbours are lovely. Everyone looks after each other there.
Yeah.
And we have a little group where we report everything, and it's lovely. And there is actually 2 parks within walking distance, so it is a good neighbourhood.
So good for you and for George.
Yeah, there's loads of kids around. I would say though, some of the houses that have been built, the bigger ones, only have 1 parking space, and there is about 2 free cars within that household, and they just park wherever. So going into our estate is a bit of a dodge course sometimes.
Sorry, you mentioned this, isn't it? About, and again, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Because developers want to get the premium amount of property that they can in that space, but then you've obviously got to try and give people what they want. But if you're building sort of 3 beds and stuff like that, it's liable that people got 2 cars.
It's one of 2 things that really annoy me about developers that do this. They do the, oh yeah, we should have built more parking spaces. Really sorry about that. They're not sorry at all. They've made an extra £200,000 by building an extra house. And the other one is the utilities, the amenities. So you've got shops, and a lot of the time you'll get on plans, you get, oh, and we're building a little pub here, and we're building a supermarket here. And all of a sudden they go out of the plans, and they get turned into houses.
Yeah, 4 houses.
Yeah, turned into 4 houses, and then the way they get around that is by saying, "Oh well, the market's changed and our costs have increased. Therefore, in order to make it work," but they're halfway through the development. They're not going to tear down the whole development. They will in Spain, because they did that in Spain where they started tearing down houses that didn't have the right planning. But in the UK, they're a lot more lenient, or seem to be a lot more lenient in that way.
That's one thing I was going to say, that there isn't enough amenities. I mean, we're starting to bring more in now, but we did have to go to the next town for like a bottle of milk or whatnot. So yeah, and also there is a lot of high demand to live in where I live at the minute, which isn't a bad thing. They're building more houses, that's great, but there's not enough through roads, so the traffic's a bit ridiculous at the minute. Yeah. So they do need to build more through roads.
Yeah.
Is that your way of saying that you might be late for work?
No.
No, I pick her up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She'll be late then.
She's always going to be late.
So how was the buying process for a developer?
Honestly, it was really smooth. I don't think it would have been as smooth if it was through an owner, only because we had an advisor who was always on the estate in a little showroom. And I had her email address, phone number. I think she was fed up with my phone calls and emails by the time I completed. But yeah, she helped us in terms of, we had no idea what broker or solicitor to use, and she gave us a list of what other buyers had used and found helpful, which helped us a lot, because honestly we had no idea when we first started. So that was a big help, and I do think because she was there, any questions we had we could ask her at all times. So
That's good. Good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
And good report for Barrett Homes.
Yeah.
Again, free house, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Well, we can try. If you don't ask, you don't get. Did you get any deals from, money off or anything like that, dealing directly with the developer? Was there any, did you get any freebies?
we didn't have any money off the asking price, only
Okay,
because
so it was what it was.
yeah, it was such high demand. We were lucky to even reserve it, to be honest.
Right, okay.
But we got free flooring, free turf, which meant we could move in straight away, and we saved a lot of money with the free flooring.
I was going to say, you worked throughout the house. So,
Yeah.
okay. And turf in the back garden. Is that the back garden?
Yeah,
or whatever?
back garden,
Okay.
yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
saved
a
So
few
lots of
thousand.
money in that.
thousands, not hundreds.
Yeah.
And like you say, moving with George, he's got somewhere to walk around rather than just
Exactly.
rub or what. They normally leave, don't they, for you
Yeah.
to do it yourself? So,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, Collins just asked there, Mills, can you explain if you want to buy the other portion of the house, what you have to pay?
Yeah, so our help to buy is up next year. So we have to pay 15% of the reservation fee. So we put down 5% and the government put down the other 15%. So we have to either remortgage to pay that off, or we can pay it up front.
Right, okay.
Fantastic.
And in normal circumstances, I suppose that the mortgage companies will know that this is coming and will have a product ready for them for when they ask for it. They're not going to hard shoulder all of these first time buyers that have previously helped in order to, because they'll lose the business at the end of the day. So you would imagine there'll be a good, healthy market for that. You'll probably pay it cash now, though, won't you?
Any delays in the buying process?
No, there wasn't. So they said it would be ready in September, and we moved in the end of September.
So you purchased off plan,
Yeah.
house isn't built, they
Mhm.
said it'd be September, and it was completed when they said?
Yeah, I mean, when we moved in, half of the estate was still yet to be built. So it was a work site for around 8 months, but it was no problem to us, didn't affect us.
It was the road that's the longest, isn't it? The road, the road entrance
Yeah.
to the estate, which
Yeah.
is the last thing that they do, because there's no point in doing it if you're still sending a load of big lorries over it.
It wrecks it, doesn't it?
It
It's a
wrecks
target.
it. So that's the last thing to do it. And you get a lot of high curbs because of it, because they come in and they put the tarmac in between the curbs. So the curbs are about that high.
I hate it. I did it the other day on a high curb.
Yeah,
Alloys.
yeah, I've done it as well.
Absolute pain in the backside. What's your experience? What was your experience in terms of the mortgage process and the rates?
So we did a fixed rate for 5 years, which I wish we hadn't have done. We did it because originally we were looking at the owned properties, and they were considerably more per month. So seeing the mortgage repayments, we thought that's quite low, so we can afford that. So we fixed it for 5 years, thinking we were getting a good deal. But obviously the rates dropped in 2020, so we missed out on that. Also, I think we would have put more of a deposit down looking back now, because obviously our help to buy is up next year. It would have been a lot easier if we would have put more of a deposit down, but because we did the help to buy scheme, we didn't see the point. But now, obviously, looking back, we do wish we did.
Yeah.
But you still had the comfort of knowing that you could afford it.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't gone the other way,
Yeah.
you would have been protected. So even though you feel like you've missed out, you haven't, because you've had that
You've
comfort.
done it for a reason.
It's like people who buy PBSA student property off us, and they get a guarantee of 8% for 3 years. The rents, the student rents, are quite often higher than that.
Yeah.
But they don't think that they've missed out because they know exactly what they're getting.
Well, I mean, I think you've answered that. Would you have done anything different?
Yeah.
It's-
I'd just not fixed it for 5 years,
yeah.
and I'd have put more of a deposit down.
So Obviously, rising energy costs, cost of living crisis is big news at the minute. We're all sitting there freezing, our backsides off. Have you seen the effects of the cost of living crisis as a young family?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, our gas and electric has doubled in the past 5 months.
Doubled?
Yeah. And
So doubled
hit winter.
in 5 months?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, and our food bills changed massively as well. I mean, we were spending about £150 pounds for about 2 to 3 weeks worth of food, and now we're spending 150 for about a week of food. So everything's changed.
That's because I go around for tea once a week.
Yeah, it is. But obviously having a toddler as well, when he leaves food, it's a bit depressing at the minute.
Yeah.
Has the increase in living costs affected you as a family? Have you changed your spending? I think we started to discuss that, but
yeah, I mean, my partner now, obviously he was paying for the bills whilst I was off work, and he no longer leaves the bathroom light on after he's left the bathroom. So yeah, it's changed for the good.
I think, didn't you mention baths as well?
Yeah. So we have showers instead of baths. We do so much to just try and get the prices down and just make sure we're not overspending on it. Make sure all the lights are turned off all the time.
Yeah. Okay. I think you mentioned, well, I mean, you said before we were talking about this, and you just started getting off topic here about the cost of living, but you want to keep hold of the house in terms of if you move on, you want to keep hold of it if you can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, where we live, there's such high demand to live in that space because obviously it is very near to town, and there's a good population there, and lots of children and parks, etc. So I think we'd get a good rent for it. A few people on the estate have actually rented their properties out, and they are getting good income from it. So I think we'd definitely try and keep that one and rent it out, and then purchase another.
Yeah, Brill. Before we leave that, I mean, well, Danielle's asked a question, which she's put: is it correct that you can't have a second buy-to-let mortgage whilst you have HTB, Help to Buy? So in theory, also next year you can progress to a second property.
I think Daniel's right. I don't think.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. I mean, they don't want people taking advantage of the mortgage market like that. It's like people regularly
now and rent out and go buy another one.
Yeah.
You can,
people regularly say to me, "Well, I'm not a homeowner, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a buy to let, but I'm going to get a residential mortgage on it." And I say, well, unless you live in there, and if you're not living there and having all of your mail sent there, then they're going to catch you out. You know, even if you're renting somewhere else, you cannot get a residential mortgage on a buy-to-let property. Doesn't work.
Heather, we're not expecting for the full address, but Heather has asked where you live. Can we ask that?
It's Winnington in Northwich.
Where? Sorry?
Winnington.
Winnington, yeah, in Northwich. It's
yes, at home. Yes, definitely, Colin.
yeah.
That's been fantastic, Millie. Thank you very much for joining us and for that insight. No, really, really interesting. Really appreciate you coming in. So yeah, and I hope that was a bit of insight for everybody. Like we say, I've not been a first-time buyer for many years.
It's an insight for us because actually a lot of people don't know how the Help to Buy scheme works.
You brought it up earlier and said not you know, in terms of, and I've never met anybody that's actually taken it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting, and it obviously helps people to get on the property ladder. Obviously,
without that, we wouldn't have been able to purchase. We just wouldn't have been able to save up the deposit.
Yeah.
So it was a massive help.
So it is a success story in one government scheme that's actually worked for someone. I'm sure there's a lot of others out there that it has worked for as well.
Well, we're going to probably know no time, but the right to buy was did well on that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Especially in the London areas.
Yeah.
There we go. Colin says thank you. Niku says thank you. I'm sure everybody else is really appreciative of it. Thank you very much, Millie. So from us, guys, we're just going to say that, that's it for this episode of Pulse on Property, POP number 2. So needless to say, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. If there are any further questions, obviously we'll answer those. Maha, I think we said and Heather, we said we'd send you some information by email. We'll certainly we'll get that information out. Colin, thank you so much for your involvement in chat, and everybody else. Niku, thank you very much to you. If there's anybody I've missed, really appreciate you joining us this evening. Been a lot of fun. Join us next time. I'm sure we'll have tons to talk about. We said next month, with everything that's changed, is going to be an interesting month. By the end of it, I'm sure we'll have a great episode. And Ian's, thank you very much to the back end, Abby for doing the slides, Rich for helping with the videography and the video, everything else with that, and Ian keeping chat alive and putting the links in. So need to say thank you very much from me. It's goodbye from him, is it?
Yeah, goodbye from me and good night from him. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah, have a lovely evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys.
Thank you all. That's been us.